right, let's get this
I
parted.
need a
I'm
minute.
going to, there's no surprise there. No surprise there. Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome! That's the excitement you've come to expect from the Alamo Draft House. Many of you have been missing this face as we've been in a quarantine period, but we are back and we're doing a new series, live Q&As on Facebook, sort of celebrating the art of cinema, celebrating the art of community, and we have brought together what I think to be the perfect opening for what this event is. For those of you who know me, I'm Andy. I do programming and promotions at the Alamo Draft House. You'll see me running around, fixing this hair, screaming and shouting, and all the sort of fun things that go along with the excitement of the movie world. There's no question about that. And I'm joined today with our partner in crime for this new series we're putting. So new, we don't even have a name for it yet. And so we'll look to Blayne Weaver to make that title for us by the end of this Q&A. But I'm here
working on a name. I'm working on it.
I like that. We're here with Sean Murphy with 1455 Literary Arts. Sean, welcome. Thanks for being a part of this.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you as a partner in crime, Andy.
Oh my gosh. Sean, real quick, for those of us who are watching for the first time and may not know 1455 off the top of their head, who are you and what is this amazing partnership we've got here with?
So I am the executive director of 1455, which is named after the year that Gutenberg's printing press started pumping out books, which I say to be the signal moment in American history or world history for democratizing content. So we take our name and our spirit from that year. And what we are is a nonprofits art organization. And what we're trying to do is build a writers community eventually right here in Winchester via a writer's retreat that we're renovating in downtown Winchester, but also in the here and now as a virtual presence via our website and tons of free programming that we're doing. If you're at all intrigued or want to learn more, there's a bunch of information on our website, which is 1455litarts.org.
Look at that. Bravo to you, Sean Murphy, for all the hard work you put into that. We're excited about having you here and excited about the program overall. So tonight's event is just going to be a discussion. We're going to talk to Blayne Weaver, a celebrity that all of us know. He can't even buy groceries this day and age in the Shenandoah Valley. But we're going to have a conversation. And if you're interested in sort of asking questions, post them on Facebook. We've got some support, but we're also here looking back and forth. We'll try to get to all of your questions. And as well as this will live on our Alamo Facebook page as well, so that you can go back and relive the glory of the very first one and remember where we were when this first one kicked off. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll begin with the true reason all of us are gathered here tonight. There should be no surprise that when we thought about opening this event for the very first time, the only name that came to mind was Blayne Weaver. And Blayne Weaver, who is up in your screen right now, many of you may remember from his hit film here, Santa Girl, last year that came through the whirlwind through the area. And now he's back with his second feature out of the Shenandoah University project that they've got, releasing films and putting films together at the university. A Getaway, which is why we're here talking. And it's just finished its screenings at the Alamo Draft House. It's screening down the Front Royal. It's got the drive-in booked. Ladies and gentlemen, Blayne Weaver, the director of Getaway, has joined us. Bravo.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a joy to talk to you. Great to meet you, Sean. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So first of all, Blayne Weaver, can I call you the best director to come out of Shenandoah University?
You know, it's fine by me.
Yes.
I'm sure it makes someone mad, but I don't know who that person is, and it's none of my business. So sure, let's go for it.
So last year, it's been a year, a little over a year you've been with us now in the Shenandoah Valley.
Well, actually, this is my third year of being a part of this in some way.
Okay.
The first year I came out was to shoot Santa Girl, and I was working for a company in Los Angeles at the time. So I was here, and, I was hanging out at the bar at Cafe Del Sol every night, and I'm pretty much doing the same things that I do now. but I wasn't involved with the university really. And then they brought me back because I was doing a movie the next year and said, hey, do you want to teach something while you're here? And I said, sure. And that's when we made Getaway. And then this year, this past year, I was the director in residence in the film department, which was quite an honor and a really enjoyable thing to do. I don't really know what it means, but I got to be here all the time and talk about movies with students and the faculty and, make a movie.
It's a crazy path that we all sort of take. Did you expect that when you came here for Santa Girl that you would be making Getaway, that you were going to be then working on a third project and so forth? Or did you think the first film was a one and done in this area?
It was a complete left turn for me, complete. I had just left New York City and moved back to Los Angeles. And Capital Arts Entertainment, which is the company that made Santa Girl and our new film that we just finished, not Getaway, but the last one. I've worked for them several times, and they reached out and said, we'd like you to go to this university and direct this film. And, and I remember I was having bad cell reception. So I stopped in a parking lot of a grocery store or something. And I'm just pacing. I'm a big pacer. The kids at school will attest to this, that I'm always pacing outside on some call or not something. But I was just pacing and I'm like, look, I just don't know if it's a good idea. It seems like you're just going to drop me in the middle of nowhere and say, do that indie film thing that you do. And it's I can't really do that alone. I need a team of people and blah, blah, blah. So I was very nervous and I drove out here and couldn't find a place for me to stay. And it was a whole thing where I'm like, geez, what am I doing here? And then basically I lived in the basement of my boss and we made this movie, and there was so much talent here. There was so much support, not just from the people in Winchester, but the film department. Paul DeFranco was a veteran, producer and, has worked in the business, 3 times as long as I have. And I'm I was worried that I would not be around people who knew how to make movies. And I'm oh, this is great. This actually works quite nicely. And then I'm, 5 minutes away from the very cool movie theater that plays indie movies. It was a joy to discover, but I was real scared. And I didn't think that there was going to be any more. I thought it was going to be this and Santa Girl, and then I'd go home. And now I have an apartment here. So
you're here with us for life.
Yes.
By the way.
Yes.
It's kind of like Twin Peaks. You'll never leave.
It is kind of like Twin Peaks.
Yes.
It is there's many comparisons actually, now that I think about it.
So how does one go from Santa Girl to Getaway? So, I feel like we've talked about Santa Girl enough. I'm going to leave that behind.
Yeah.
But for those folks coming in to our theater, we had a lot of folks who came in who were looking at Santa Girl and saying, I'm ready to see Blayne Weaver's next one, surprised by the next effort that came out, because they're two very different films. And so talk to me a little bit about your approach to this film after Santa Girl.
Well, first of all, I will say that, and I think Sean can attest to this, as a writer, the last thing I want to write after I've worked on something, is something just like it. I want to do something completely different. And, I'm so tired of my version of a Christmas movie. I want to see my version of something completely different, So basically what happened, and it's a weird, funny story. And here it goes. I'm going to tell it right now. So we did Santa Girl. Santa Girl was supposed to be done for that Christmas, and we weren't able to sell it in time before all of the streaming platforms need 3 months, right? And so they basically shelved it, and I was well, it's the last thing I wanted. Everybody from the movie wanted it to go that Christmas, and we were pushing so hard to make that happen. But then they really liked the way that Santa Girl came out, so the company in California said, what else you got? And I wrote this movie that was a suspense thriller kind of thing, in a Lifetime kind of world. And it's kind of again, Sean would understand this, when they give you restrictions, it's well, okay, here's the restrictions. We need to use the university. We need to work with student actors. It needs to be Winchester, Virginia in the fall. So you take that and you just run with it. And I wrote this suspense thriller thing of a Lifetime ilk. And we sold it to Lifetime. or so I thought. And then I came to Winchester and we started prep on this movie. And then Lifetime Europe passed on it, which meant that the whole thing fell apart. And I didn't even know there was a Lifetime Europe that we were waiting on. Like we literally had a green light and we had done everything but cast. And so then it was like, well, I've been out here. I'm teaching this class, so I can still teach it remotely. So I guess I'm just going home to Los Angeles. And the film department, Paul DeFranco and Gina Daddario and Jeff Coker, they were like, well, wait a minute, can't you make something? What would it take for you to make something? I'm like, well, a feature is very expensive. It's like it's impossible to make an inexpensive feature unless maybe it's a horror film. And, then we started thinking on that. And I had this old script that I hadn't touched in a million years. And I was like, ooh, we could do this. If we could find that perfect location, we could do this. So it really it went from Lifetime thriller. 3 weeks later, we were casting for Getaway. And 4 weeks later, we were shooting it. And 6 weeks later, we were done. And we literally shot a 19-hour day because we had that snow blizzard thing happened that, shut down everything for like 2-3 days. So we had one day before everybody went home for Thanksgiving. And it was like, we're never getting these kids back again. Like they scattered to the wind. That's it. And so we did the craziest day I've ever done in production. And we made Getaway. But it was really about budget. It was about what we can do with the time that we have. And it was about making it marketable, because one of the things we really want the Shenandoah Film Department to be working on is not just, we're going to shoot a 90-minute movie with students. We're going to shoot a feature film that is competitive in the market. It's going to come out. I've never had a film that I've made that has not had a release. So that's very important to me. And the only film you can really sell without famous cast, is horror. And it worked so much better than my highest hopes. Like I brought up my director of photography from Nashville, Chad McLarnon, who became a producer on the movie. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, we're going to go out. We're going to see what we can do. Like, I don't know how good the kids are because we hadn't cast anybody yet. I don't know, like, what our restrictions are going to be. But I think it's, 2-3 guys counting Paul, who was mostly in the office. But, like, if the three of us can just do our thing and get to make art, it's really exciting. But also, we have no idea what's going to come out of it. And I'm so pleased. That was a very long answer to a very easy question.
First of all, that's how this whole series is going to go, by the way. Okay. Easy question, 20-minute answer. There's no question about that. We've got 4 questions for the entire run, and that's it. So, Blayne, how did you prep for this? I mean, did you find yourself immersed into the world of slasher films? Did you go back and research some of the favorites? Did you have those folks that you then cast research a little bit as well? Because you've talked about the stress and pressures of, like, it's marketable, I've got to get it out and that sort of thing, but you're still educating with all of this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So talk to me a little bit about maybe the films that you watched to get into this project, and then maybe what you told those that you hired as a part of the cast, what they should be looking at and watching and following.
My preparation was very much wing and a prayer. A lot of the preparation that I did was, was getting to know the students and what I felt their strong suits might be and where they would fit in the thing, and then trying to build the characters around that, and so there's a lot of that. There was a lot of, like, we didn't know where we were going to be until one of the students, I was like, look, I need something, a campground, abandoned house, something that has to have electricity. And we had, here are, and one kid had, done an Airbnb at Buffalo Gap Retreat, which is a lovely place. And I highly recommend it because they were incredibly kind to us. But they were closing down for the season. And so it was going to be completely empty. So we got this great location. So then it was like, all right, so here we are. So what do we need to do to the script to make this work and make all of this happen? And, as far as my research goes, really, I just carried with me what I already liked. Like, I loved Halloween. I loved the simplicity of that before, Friday the 13th, before it turns like, he's the Walking Dead kind of thing. I love that kind of thing. And I also love scary movies that you can also get a laugh out of. It's like, this isn't the kind of movie that is going to mess you up for life. This is the kind of movie that you're going to have some popcorn and a soda and walk out and be like, oh, that scared me so bad. That kind of thing. But Chad McClarnon, luckily for me, brought a deep, deep background in horror and would always, say, well, you mean like that movie? I'm like, I haven't seen that movie, but if that happens in that movie, then I say that we should do that. We're emulating. But it was really, simplistic, real life scary is scarier to me than ghosts and goblins and stuff like that. So we just focused on that and trying to make our blood effects as real as possible. And also the movie is very meta, right? The movie is very much about students making a horror film, and a horror film happens around it. So we tried to just pack it with as much insider baseball as we possibly could of like, if there's a line in the movie that says, her movie probably would have been pretty good, derivative, uninspired, but blood effects go a long way. and punt to the face to anybody that feels my movie is derivative. But it is in an homage-y kind of way,
And I've got to tell you, I found a bit of Blayne Weaver, I thought, in Tabitha, with the stress and concerns of trying to put together a motion picture with students that were all over the place.
It was the most fun.
Like there was a bit of Blayne Weaver in that character?
Literally, we would add stuff to the script every single day that had just happened. It's like, where's the cool knife? Where's the good dull knife? Because we have a plastic knife, and then we have a dull knife, and then we have a real knife for close-ups that need to, stab into, fake stuff. But the cool knife became the thing that we were constantly looking for, and that's a line in the movie. Where's the cool knife with the blood effects and like we did some stuff, and the blood didn't look very real, so we put that comment into the movie as a payoff to something else that happens later. Because it's like, let's acknowledge what's happening, because that just makes it more and more fun to me. But yes, the directing was really fun.
And what? Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, it's funny, like, Blayne, first of all, it certainly seemed seamless and well prepared, but I think that speaks to something that, my writer friends might not really appreciate, which is, I think, a writer would naturally gravitate toward. It's all about the script and the writing has to be perfect. How much of this is a function of really surrounding yourself with capable people? Because I think with music and film, that element of having talent, you can improvise on the fly. So even if it hasn't been written out, it seems like you really just worked with that. But that's a credit to the entire ensemble that you were able to do that without having everything planned out in advance.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And like, that's normally, how I work. My whole outlook is surround yourself with the most talented people that you possibly can, and then listen to them. It's a little different, when we're making a film like this. I mean, so different than Santa Girl, so different from the new film, because we're isolated in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of night. And it's literally myself and Chad McClarnon are the only two grownups there, not to denigrate the college students. They're grownups, blah, 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 but they're new, they're green. There's no gaffer that's being like, hey, don't touch that. That can hurt, that kind of thing. So Chad and I were constantly, brainstorming about like, how do we elevate this? It's like, this is what it could be, but what could be cool? And paying attention to the talented young people and trying to encourage them, because I came to directing through acting. And very early in my career, I learned that if I'm nervous, I'm not going to be as good as I would be if I'm bold and confident, right? So for us, it's about making them feel like this is their project, and have fun and play. And some of the greatest stuff that we have of them bantering and, talking amongst themselves are improvs that they did, and I honestly feel that's because by the time we were, on location, freezing in the middle of the night, they felt some ownership and felt some confidence that they could try new stuff. And that's just what it was. It's like Chad and I planned the action. That I'm so often in this movie, I'm wearing the mask because I didn't want any kind of liability, or, it's like very late at night and people are falling and there's knives and, all kinds of stuff. So literally I won't say how, but a lot of the time, Blayne Weaver is in that mask. And being like, how's it look? I can't see through this eye hole. But like, I'd rather me get hurt than, the person that's supposed to be in the mask.
Sure.
Oh, not going to tell you.
Oh, got to see the movie. No spoilers on this one. Blayne Weaver, so walk me back just a little bit. So you wrote this film when? Like the story for this film was
decades ago. I mean, years ago. Literally 10 years ago, probably. I wrote a version of this movie that changed dramatically based on, the student. First of all, the cast is giant. Like we had, I believe, 11 students, that we wanted to get into this movie. And Chad kept turning to me and like shooting coverage, as you can imagine, is like, well, those 3 have to stand together and those 4 have to stand together if we want to get through this night. But he was constantly like, why are there so many parts in this movie? And it was like, it was really because I was around the students, I was around the actors. I'm like, oh, you'd be great as this, and you'd be great as this. And just kind of like taking stock things and, changing them into what we had.
Well, despite the number of people in this film that we are seeing on screen, I felt it very easy to follow the characters and understand who they were and what was going on. And I think ultimately what I was going to ask you was, what ultimately changed from that initial script to what we saw on the screen? You've spoken already about how much you gave creativity to the students and how much you were changing things on the fly. If we were to go back and read that initial script, would it be what we saw on the screen right now?
I don't think so. I think, in concept, perhaps, but I think the heart of it came from the students because we really did tailor the parts to be stuff that I knew that they could excel at and knock out of the park, and some, not to say that they're playing themselves, because they're not. Like, all of them are stretching and playing something different, but it's something that I had seen and been like, oh, you can do this, great. So I think the heart and getting to know and like the kids and them not being stock, because again, I did write it 10 years ago, and it's one of those things where you read a script, something you wrote 10 years ago and you're like, oh, what a hack I was. I can't believe it. I can't read something I wrote last month and not say that. But it got better in that way. And also the budget for the script I'd written a long time ago was, to sell. It was to be gigantic and, expensive. And so we would have to look at it and be like, okay, well, they can't be driving with a guy riding on the back of the car. What are we going to do instead? What's something that we can achieve in our budget level that doesn't look silly? And sorry, go ahead.
So I'm fascinated, right? Because I think this is an impossible question, and it might sound like a leading question, but in all sincerity, like I feel like, if you had a bigger budget, I mean, you would have done other things, but the immediacy and kind of the claustrophobia and you can't tell it was filmed quickly. But I wonder if having, limited resources almost obliged kind of this, everyone kind of being on the edge of their, capabilities and really being in the zone.
I mean, I think so. I really do. And it was like, having Buffalo Gap Retreat, as like a gift. It really was, because us trying to create something that looked like what we basically had all these scenes, and we go in there and say, okay, we'll put that scene in the cafeteria. All right. And we'll put this scene by this beautiful body of water, and these cabins, we'll use these cabins for stuff. What should we use them for? It really was. And it's how I hooked Chad into doing it to begin with, because, we didn't have a lot of money, but I'm like, look, the input and the power that you're going to have on this movie is a very rare thing. And it's like, it's what I'm excited about. And he got on board 100%. And like I said, now as a producer on the film, and we just would brainstorm every night or every morning, depending on when we were shooting. Another budget thing about this thing that was so interesting was I didn't take into account that the conservatory students at Shenandoah are in an intense conservatory, like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I went to college. I had like 2 classes on Thursday, but I'm like, my Wednesday's open. you know, but they work all the time. So me trying to get 11 kids together to shoot was a nightmare, and like get them an hour and a half out of town, shoot, get them back for their next morning. So what we ended up doing after the first week was just like, all right, forget it. We're just shooting all weekend. Everybody's going to stay there. We're going to, be in, be in the cabin, and we'll sleep during the day and we'll shoot at night. And we did that for 2 long weekends. And then we found some other places to steal some exterior shots, but it was intense guerrilla filmmaking. By the time it was over, like everybody broke down in tears, had a complete mental breakdown, got the flu. Whatever you do at the end of it, we did it.
It's interesting. We did an interview with Brett Story, the director of The Hottest August, in which it's the film that she filmed 2 years ago, released now, about climate change in New York City. And it's crazy to watch with sort of COVID eyes, especially now, and thinking like people not talking about climate change, not talking about all of this. I wonder if there is a reason why Getaway is coming out now. I often found myself thinking, how smart was Blayne Weaver when people were running around yelling, "Where's my mask? Where's my mask? Where's my mask?" And so, like, I ultimately, my question for you is, looking at it now with this sort of eye in this sort of world, are you catching things that you didn't necessarily catch that are relevant now, and that sort of thing as well? Like, how are you seeing Getaway as it's coming out in theatrically?
I mean, what's interesting is, everything that's happened, has kind of in an odd way given Getaway like some room to breathe. It's we got picked up by Gravitas, for a DVD, digital, all that stuff is happening in December, and we're super excited about that. And but like there's this, lack of giant movies in the cinemas right now, and Getaway is kind of like, all right, well, we're talking to drive-ins, we're talking to Alamo. It's like, we'd love to come out and play these little windows. I think the world is hungry for entertainment and distractions and whatnot, and I think that Getaway is that. It's a, to me, super fun, scary, enjoyable, 90 minutes of your life that you're just like, man, that was fun. And I feel like that's something that is important. Someone asked me the other day on a radio interview, if I could make it now. And I'm like, not in a million years. Like, not in a million years could we achieve Getaway during these restrictions. I just made a movie with Shenandoah and Capital Arts, during COVID, with the testing and the, just the millions of things you have to do to ensure everyone's safety. And it's like, it's crazy to me watching Getaway and being like, I can't, like, literally all of those kids were sleeping in one cabin, and like we had a big jug of water because they had shut off the water. Like, that's one of the lines that got added into the movie, just up here shutting off the water. And because we were shooting, and there's a guy who's like, I'm just shutting off the water. I was like, whoa, hey, actually, gonna need that. What? Everywhere you're shutting off water. But yeah, it was hard in the time of that it was shot, but it would be impossible now. And so it's kind of like, when I watch it, I'm like, wow, I'm really glad that we grabbed the bull and did that. We just really went after it, and we made a really fun, good movie, I think.
Yeah, you did. It was quite enjoyable. So I'm going to stick with this mask philosophy a little bit more.
Go.
Give me the origin story of the mask. So obviously there's an origin story within the film that we got, but how did you come up with that image? Because to me, when I think of Getaway right now, that mask is what comes to mind. It's sort of like the Scream mask. It just has sort of that iconic feel to it, and I could feel additional potential stories coming out from that in the future without giving anything away. But where did you come up with that mask? Or who came up with that mask?
What's funny is, so story-wise, that was one of the initial elements of the first script. Somebody comes across a scarecrow, deheads the scarecrow for use in their movie, which to me, I can totally relate to, of like making movies and being like, oh, can we steal this? Is this Like, is anybody going to notice if we just take this? Because it's perfect for my movie. But the effect that you're talking about is Taylor Burke, who is a graduate of Shenandoah University. She was a student when we made Santa Girl. She was a student when we made Getaway. And I said, look, I just want like a scary scarecrow thing. I don't know. Like, what do you think? And she came back like 2 days later with this thing. And I'm like, that's the scariest thing I've ever seen. That's amazing. And like, again, as Sean was saying, it's like great people getting to play. Like, she is a costumer. That's what she studied. That's what she's interested in. And I'm like, go play, figure it out. Because mostly what I'm doing is having her, buy outfits for, something cute, but not too expensive. That's usually what I have Taylor go and buy for actors and stuff. But me getting to say, this person's supposed to be terrifying, so go make something. And she did.
And it's a home run, right? The mask was freaking horrifying.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you think so, because it was spooky to us. One of the interesting things, like, this is my first proper horror film. I did a short horror film, which is about ghosts and stuff like that, for the Louisiana Film Prize the same year. But I was kind of in the horror world. And but this is the first one where we're actually running around at night, with people chasing each other. And, and I've heard in movie interviews before people say, well, it's terrifying. I mean, you're not really acting so much because somebody is chasing you with what looks like a knife, and usually they're wearing like a really creepy mask, and it's really scary. You're not acting much. That is absolutely true. Like, there is this feeling of, even when somebody's running with a rubber knife, when you hear, an actress scream and hit that high note, it's like everybody's kind of like, all right, everybody okay? Okay. It's not like action stuff. Like, I've done lots of fights and lots of, thriller kind of stuff, but like that sense of impending doom and some person walking after you with intent is really scary. And it, I think it translates in the movie, but in real life, on set, it was unnerving.
It's interesting. When I was watching this film, I was recalling back to our discussion we had with Eduardo Sanchez and Blair Witch Project. Because he talked a lot about how, for him, he and the crew would just give the cast a few pages of scripts or say, you have to give this word or this word. Yeah. And then they would go out into the woods, and then they would literally scare the cast by what they were doing and that sort of thing. Like the breaking of the leaves or the walking around was all that. Were you doing some of that as well, to sort of get the students involved with this? It felt like a perfect opportunity there for you to be frightening them to no end, and then trying to get them to sleep during the day and that sort of thing.
No, I agree. It is a perfect opportunity. I don't love that. Like, as an actor, I don't like really being messed with, by my director. I worked with the guy that I've told Andy this story before, but the guy who inspired me to let me know that I could direct was this terrible director who was constantly messing with everybody's heads. And I just disliked it so much. And again, I go back to that thing of like, them being comfortable is the most important thing to me. Them knowing that, if they feel unsafe, or if they're, in Santa Girl with Pep, Michaela Witt, like she, Jennifer Stone, it was a very cold day. Jennifer Stone came to me and said, hey, my feet are freezing. Do you care if I put on my hiking boots? Are you going to see my feet? I'm like, no, it's fine. Go ahead. Little did I know that Michaela had no idea of this conversation. And 3 hours later, like, her feet are frozen, and like we were worried that she might have frostbite or something. And I'm like, why wouldn't you just tell me? Like, why wouldn't you just come to me? And it's like, that's more where my wheelhouse is, of like, talk to me, and I'll get you there. I'll get you to wherever you need to go. Now, that being said, I am not above screaming in somebody's face to make them look surprised. I did do that many times. I'm like, all right, it doesn't really feel like you're surprised. I want you to be surprised, like you think somebody's behind you about to kill you. And they're like, ah. So I did a little bit of a, but that's pretty much as far as I go on that kind of stuff. Like, I want them to get there together, because I think that's something that has a negative, like those actors in Blair Witch were great, and I don't know
but
how.
They weren't actors, I think, at the time,
Yeah,
and
they
so
did an amazing job. I tell you, I've worked with a lot of actors that, like, you mess with them too much, they'll just shut down.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so we don't want to, go down that road, because if they shut down, we're done.
Sure.
But I've seen, I really like Blair Witch. That's one of the ones that I was just standing up for Blair Witch the other day. Somebody was like, oh, I'm like, look, maybe it got too overrated at the time, but that is a great, like, barrier breaking film.
No,
You know,
I mean,
like that movie important, and the acting is so solid. I think, you know, even anything that's uneven or whatever throughout the movie, you cannot discount those performances, says me.
yeah.
Well, and
No, I completely agree. Go ahead, Sean.
you know, and you know that makes me think of Blayne and Andy. My recollection is both Blair Witch and Memento came out as similar, and they were both brilliant marketing. They were using the very nascent. I mean, the internet had certainly been around, but the whole viral, we're going to make a fake website. Is this really a true story? But that, what I was going to say, one of the things I'd written down, and you reminded me, Blayne, talking about if you had filmed this 10 years ago, again, whether it was large budget or at that time, it would have obviously been solid. But I liked, when I was watching it, one of the things I thought was meta within meta is we're in this cultural moment now where everyone's filming themselves. And so even within the context of the movie, it's not just relevant and it's not a throwaway. Like, I think the viewer is completely thrown because it's like, whether this is the killer or a voyeur, like everyone is recording themselves. So I think it is the movie itself is very of the now because of the fact that as a cultural entity, even a horror movie, right, there's an element of how do I look while I'm being killed? Like,
right. No, and that's something that has elevated so much, and a lot because of the kids. You know, I will say that me being around, you know, Generation Z, I guess, you know, whatever, has made me a much better writer, a much more in tune writer than I was. You know, I'm talking about 3 years ago. You know, it's like I'm like when I got here, I was 41, I think. You know, and I don't feel like that, you know, distances me from the zeitgeist. Like I'm, you know, up on what the kids are doing, but I'm not. And that's like seeing how me, who considers myself like a very, you know, with it, up with the date kind of guy, how out of sync I am with what they're doing, you know? And I think that, like, that element of the videoing and the, you know, the whole device of the movie where they're making a movie and the killer might be making a movie and there's a movie about all of this stuff. It just elevated with their input of like the social media, you know, world. And I think it's fascinating. You couldn't have told me how disconnected I am before.
Well, give an example. Give an example of something that you learned, right? I mean,
the way they talk is just different, and I love, like, I usually teach a screenwriting class. So with Getaway, we would do readings of the screenplay, and as we got closer, we would read it with the people playing those parts in the parts, and just the corrections that I would get. Nobody talks like that. I'm like, come on, people say that, don't they? No, they don't. Yeah, I just did Cupid for Christmas is the new movie, so I'm back to my Shenandoah roots in the Christmas world. But there's a character in it who's a professor, and I have a kid call him Prof, and my students made fun of me to this day. Like, they're still making fun of me. Hey, Prof. Because I guess nobody says Prof. But let me tell you something. In the Rodney Dangerfield starring Back to School, they did.
You had to cut a bunch of dudes out of there. A lot of people saying gnarly.
Yeah, well, you know. Not far from it. Not far from it.
So where are you on writing right now, Blayne? What are you writing? What are you thinking about, and what's inspiring you right now?
That's a very good question. Well, I just literally yesterday locked picture on the new movie that we shot at Shenandoah, which hopefully will be done this Christmas. It's called A Cupid for Christmas, and it's charming and romantic and all of those things. But since then, I'm not really sure. Like, I haven't reset myself to write for myself. I'm working on a job right now that's a thriller kind of thing, but it's someone else's movie. It's, you know, just something that I'm writing for them for pay. But, like, what do I want to do next? I don't know. That's a very good question. I'd like a break from Christmas for a second, especially shooting Christmas in July. which is, is not an easy thing to do. But yeah, I want to switch it up again. You know, I don't know if it's horror, but something with gravitas and not the company, the word, with something that, you know, has some weight to it and consequences and what. I don't know. I'd love to do a scary movie, actually. Like learning what I did from Getaway, it's like, it feels like that's like step one. Like we could do so much more stuff with the knowledge that I gained making that movie.
Well, I got to tell you, one of the things that really impressed me about Getaway was not just the mask. We've already talked about that, but the sound effects were so strong on that film. I love the way this movie sounded, but then the other part that I absolutely adored was the music to this film. You know, I don't remember Santa Girl having a more modern feel to it, and this had that sort of great sound. Were you involved in the music side of it, and then the enhancement of sort of the sound effects and that sort of thing? 'Cause I think that really a huge part.
No, I think that's great. I love that you said that. I can't wait to let my composer and my Chad McLaren know that. Okay, his name is Tim Grogan. He's out of Nashville. He's a genius. It's the first movie he's ever composed. He was a good friend of Chad McLaren's. Wow. Tim is a musician. He travels in bands. He, you know, is a musician for hire, but also has his own band. And he wanted to do something weird and different. And Chad was like, well, what we want is for him to do something weird and different. And I just think it was just beautiful. I love it. And it can be at the same time throwback to the 80s horror films that we're kind of emulating while being completely new. And I just, again, it's like you said, surrounding yourself with people who have the talent and the power to go and do something fun and weird and different. And that's the thing that people are like, oh, that's cool. And the sound effects and stuff, again, good ear. There's a company called Studio Unknown out of Baltimore, which we didn't think we'd be able to find anything, you know, within drivable that we'd be able to mix the movie here. And they've done a lot of, Elijah Wood has a company that does horror films. I don't know the name of it, but they've worked with him several times. And, you know, our whole thing was that we don't have the budget to really, or the interest really in putting the gore on the screen, but we want it to feel intense. We wanted it to feel real. And these guys were like, oh yeah, so you want, we know what you need. And they were fantastic. So any of the filmmakers happen to be watching Studio Unknown, they were great. They bent over backwards for us. You know, it's like we didn't have much money, but you know, they were able to make a deal for us to make it work out. And they're great.
I thought that was a huge element to this film, and it kept pulling me back in further and further into the story. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
You know, Blayne, one of my questions I've got for you is right now there is this love and passion that I want to explore for the theatrical experience. So, you know, we are in a time right now where the theatrical experience is getting trickier. The navigation around it is a little weird, and there's a lot of pressure to potentially watch movies from the comfort of your own home and that sort of thing. And so I want to ask you, just as we look towards getting close to this hour mark, what is your first theatrical experience that you remember?
We took a turn. I didn't know we were going there.
How has that shaped the Blayne Weaver we're talking to right now?
The first theatrical experience I remember, well, I'm sure I saw other things beforehand, but like it was, I'm taking a curve because you're not going to expect this, but it was Mary Poppins. And I remember, not the original release, people. Okay. It was, you know, a later release, but I'm in the movie theater and I'm little, and I got a cousin who's a year younger than me, and she starts crying to the point where she had to be carried out. And I was like, you know, what is her problem? Jeez. And like, because I was so offended that she was going to mess up the coolest thing ever. And they were like trying to leave. And I'm like, I will freak out if we leave this movie right now. So literally somebody walked around with my baby cousin outside. My mom stayed with me. And, you know, I watched the rest of Mary Poppins. Okay. And like, I remember it vividly, but I think it's such, you know, as an actor as well, you know, I come from theater, that shared experience is so special. And I went and saw, I got into town and I was still editing this movie, and I got to go to Getaway at the Alamo on Sunday night. And it was like the last showing, you know, and I'm like, maybe I'll just go for a minute. And I went in there, and, you know, one of the owners of the Buffalo Gap was there with a bunch of his friends watching the movie, you know, and there were a couple other people I didn't know, but it was so awesome to sit there and see it. And it got me so melancholy because of the one thing, and we were talking about this before we started the thing, but like the one thing I knew for a fact I was going to give these kids was a cast and crew screening experience where they were going to get to see themselves 40 feet high with their loved ones, with their friends, celebrate that, you know, which is so special. And like, you know, the people that make movies are really a very small group, you know, it's like, yeah, there's thousands, there's hundreds of thousands, but whatever, it's still like this community of people. And we all know how special that thing is to be on that big screen. I miss it a lot. And I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that we're going to figure things out one way or the other, and we'll be back in the theater because it's a human need. It's not something that goes away. It's not something that Netflix or anything else can replace. We need to be together. We need to be able to watch things, enjoy it together, be vocal, laugh and cry and, you know, jump. And it's important to our society, says me.
Well, we have decided to regroup and show plenty and all of Blayne Weaver's films coming around the bend for a series we're calling Blayne Weaver and Chill. Similar to the Netflix experience, except your clothes remain on.
Well, sadly, I will be there. I don't know if anybody else will, but
You have a fan base that will join us. There's no question about that. Well, no, that's what I love to hear. You know, I've gotten into the habit of asking more and more people about their theatrical experience and what they remember the most about it, especially just as we sort of look at this time. I completely agree with you. Things I think will get stronger and we'll become better with it. But the screening for Getaway that I was in had people gasping. There were chuckles. You know, you want to hear that visceral reaction from folks, you know, and I don't know how you are as you watch your movie. I've worked with a few folks who sit in there and they say, oh, I could have done that a little bit better, or I could have grown that joke or lasted that, stab motion a little bit longer. Do you edit yourself often as you're watching your movies, or are you typically happy with final product?
I'm typically happy with final product. It's about compartmentalizing to me. You know, it's like, I think that's how you direct and act at the same time. It's how you direct and produce at the same time. It's like, now is not the time to worry about that particular thing. I'm putting it here, right? But the key to, I think, enjoying a good film is a fervent, crazy, intense editing process where I've seen it all. I know if there's something that's not good there, I know why it's there. It's there because there's no other option. We tried everything. You know, somebody was sick that day and they were giving something bad, and it's like, this was out of focus, so we have to cover that right here. But like, when I lock a movie, I'm like, this is good. I feel like this is the best I can do with what I got to make. And usually I'm very excited about that. Like, I've never left a lock not happy. And getting to watch Getaway, I mean, it does get boring having to watch QC, quality control, you know, watch throughs. I hate that. But it's been a long time since I've had to do that for Getaways. So I got to sit there and hear people gasp and, you know, be surprised at the end. And, you know, lots of twists and turns in this movie that I think are really enjoyable, especially with an audience. So
absolutely it is. Absolutely. Sean, what do you got? I feel like I've overstepped my Sean boundary here.
I'm always content to sit back and let two maestros go. So
oh my gosh.
The conversations is great. I would say, Blayne, that you know, I talk to writers all the time, and we talk about the craft, and we talk about, you know, frankly, kind of this very introverted, you know, solitary endeavor. I just want to take a moment and genuinely kind of both acknowledge and celebrate not just being a jack of all trades, but to be able to write and act and direct, very different skill sets, very different. You talked about compartmentalizing. I want to, you kind of stand back in awe that you've got the energy and the ability to do those things. I'm curious if, and here's my impossible question. If you had to direct and not write, or write and you didn't have to direct, is that a choice you could make, or to be like, you know, hack off one of my limbs?
I write all the time for people that are directing, that are not me, you know? So, and I had some growing pains with it. But I think the key is acknowledging what that job is. A writer for movies, you know, is there's lots of punchlines about it. It's like, you know, it's like the last person who should get any credit should be the writer, you know, and we're just immediately pushed to the side during the movie process. And it's difficult. And then, like, you know, I wrote a movie that should now remain nameless, but I wrote it and I was very happy with how it came out. It wasn't the kind of movie I would go see, but it was like, no, I think this fits in this genre very well. And then nobody talked to me for months. And I'm like, I don't think they even used my draft. And then I got invited to the premiere. I'm like, oh, neat. And I went and I'm like, this is cool. And there's my name. And then as it went on, I'm like, whoa, none of this is my dialogue. None of this. Like, not one word that's coming out of people's mouths. And I'm freaking out. And I'm like, you know, it's the nature of it. You know, it's like there's going to be a guy like me who takes it on and says, now it's mine. And I want to make it special. And like, I've gotten to a point where I'm comfortable with that, you know, as long as we know what the deal is up front. That's why I love directing, though, is because I know that I'm not Shakespeare. I know it can always elevate. It can always get better, you know? And so what I do is I hire great, funny, talented actors, and then I steal all of their lines and take credit for it when I get the written by credit. It's like, yes, that was funny that day that you said that on set, but I decided to put you there. So I get to take credit.
Well, I can't resist, you know, it's a cliche, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. They talk about the difference between terrible bosses and effective bosses, and effective bosses are not intimidated and in fact want to hire very talented and capable people because it elevates. I think it's safe to say that you kind of epitomize the wisdom of understanding the product is the final goal. And if we're elevating the content, we're all going to look better. So it sounds like a no-brainer. And I think to those that aren't in the artistic realm would be like, duh, that's a very rare quality, I think, from a boss or a director. So props to you for recognizing that. And I think the finished product bears out those results.
I appreciate that. Those are nice words, and they resonate with me, especially. Not too long ago, when I was in LA, actually, I got to see an actress friend of mine who had worked on a movie with a difficult actor, and she's like, you know, before I saw the movie, I was thinking about this thing. He did this thing on set, and I really didn't like it. And you came up to me and you just said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take that out." And you did. Like, you don't even see it, but like, you knew that he could do whatever he wanted to do because I was going to edit it the way that I wanted to. All I need to do is for him to keep shooting. As long as I have footage, you know, I can make it be whatever, you know. But it's like, it's just one of those things of like, don't worry, this is going to be fun. We're not changing any of the things we've talked about. We're just going to let him do his thing, and then we're going to bring it back home, you know. But you know, it's movies. Movies are collaborative, and you have all these different talents and all these different personalities that you're juggling all the time. And if you keep in mind, to me, like, this is my mantra: the movie is the most important thing, you know. And I needed that because I'm a hothead. I have, you know, obviously, you know, I have an ego. I have all these things, but on a movie set, I'm the best version of me because I know that, like, the movie is the only thing that really matters.
And have you had to adjust that a little bit when working with students in comparison to working with, you know, those who are already in the field itself?
Not really.
Okay.
To be honest, it's kind of the same. I mean, it's like, you know, working with a very talented TV star and a, you know, very talented but inexperienced, you know, student who's also, you know, both of them might be, what's the word? Unwilling to control their emotions or their feelings, or their, you know, one because they're rich and famous and one because they're young and haven't really been through the ringer yet, you know. But it's like that same thing of like keeping them working, keeping them producing, and in a place where they feel safe to create, to me is the key to all of it. And yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes that leads to problems where it's like, well, you know, I don't know. I think that philosophy has served me way more than it's cost me.
One of my favorite early Blayne stories was when we were talking about Santa Girl. and your reaction when you were filming something and a student just dropping the boom and saying, I got to go to class, and then just leaving the set that day. Do we feel like we have that part under control at least now?
I mean, yes, yes, we do. I mean, the cool thing is that I said all during Santa Girl, I'm like, you guys don't realize how cool this is. You don't realize it, and I don't blame you because I'm just some guy. But I'm telling you, this movie's going to come out, and it's going to be something that you think is cool, whether you do now or not, and you're going to be happy that you're on it. By the time it came out, which is after Getaway, right? So Getaway, we still have some of that of like, what are we doing now? I'm like, you're starring in a movie right now. If that's okay. No, but but with this last one, even with all the COVID, craziness and whatever, there was a real, everybody who was there wanted to be there. And, we did it during the summer, but we had cast all of these students from the spring. So I was like, well, we'll give them the opportunity to do it. They're welcome to come out. We still can't pay them. We still can't, it's the same rules. It's a student, it's a student project, but if they want to come, and they all came, everybody, I'm like, from all corners of, the country came back to play these roles, both big and small. And I'm like, that's the work of Santa Girl right there. That's they've seen that it goes out into the world and that it becomes something, and it's something that they wanted to be a part of. So this movie was absolutely the last one, everybody was in line and excited and prepped and stoked to be there, which is a really nice thing for me.
And you know what's interesting? I'm trying to think if there's a way that I can connect Santa Girl and Getaway somehow. Only because we see some familiar faces within the two, and so I'm finding myself. I'm finding myself saying, do they live in the same world? And if so, how disturbing is that world they live in that I should be in? But yeah, Josh Cody, obviously, I was just like, I recognize him. And then obviously, this doesn't give anything away, but one of the policemen at the end, I think, was in Santa Girl as well. And so I found myself sort of like, well, this is a weird dual connection going on here. So, but do you ever find yourself writing, as you're writing some of these films for some of the students that you've worked with in the past, knowing what talents they've got?
For sure. I absolutely Josh Cody's a perfect example. I love Josh, and we had worked on Santa Girl together, and he plays a role in Getaway, and he's great. And it was a different role. This is something, again, from that actor world of me. I don't want them to play the same part again. I want them to want to do something different and mix it up and whatnot. Of course, Hank Stone, who played Jack Frost in Santa Girl, pretty much is still creepy.
I was going to lead with that next question next.
Yeah. But he's great. I mean, you use the assets that you have. I mean, it's kind of like what we were talking about before. If you know somebody's good, you want to use them all the time.
So do we have a release date for your next project?
The Getaway will come out on DVD and Blu-ray December 22nd.
Right.
Cupid for Christmas. I'm not sure.
Cupid for Christmas. Okay.
We're hoping for this Christmas. We're hoping that there seems to be a real hunger for content right now because of pandemic and whatnot. So we're hoping to get it out sooner than later, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, you have a home at the Alamo Draft House when
You're
that
gonna
film
love
is ready. So I'm excited to see the Blayne Weaver relationship and the stories that are coming out. We had a great reaction and response to Cut to the Chase, which is a project that I enjoyed quite a bit, but I think everyone else should be out there exploring and discovering that film when they have the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
So, because I love that there's these happy, very joyous films intermixed with violence and darkness, because I get to see both of Blayne Weaver right there. I'd love to have him over for Christmas. Do not want to see him in a darkened alley. There's no question there.
That's pretty much how my family feels about me.
So, we're coming up here to the hour mark, and I don't want to overstep where we were and sort of your time and that sort of thing. We appreciate everything here. I grew up with the Q&A stylings of James Lipton.
Sure.
If you remember that. And he always ended his Q&As with some traditional questions. And I have a gentleman in my friend base, I guess you could say, who is notorious for writing some of the best questions ever. He has stumped some of the biggest minds out there. And so, Blayne Weaver, I'm going to end, before we open it up to see if there's anything online, with 4 questions for you to get into your mind, to get into the psyche, but then also just to sort of be ready for any future projects that you've got. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Question 1. As a director, you are one of those. What do you think the fake blood on your set should taste like?
Conveniently, it should always taste like candy, like sugar syrup, because I'm constantly pouring it into people's mouths, and they don't like it, or up their nose. This is something that I've experienced in lots of movies that aren't just horror films. But unfortunately, if there's blood, it's probably getting somewhere around your facey area, and you're going to get way too close with Blayne Weaver being like, nah, let me just tilt your head back. I've done that quite a few times to movie stars, and they don't like it, especially if it doesn't taste like candy. So it better taste like candy. That's my answer.
And also be prepared when you sign on for Blayne Weaver film, blood in the face.
There will be blood.
There will be.
There will
another
be blood.
Another funny thing about shooting at the university is that, you know, there's very few grown-ups. So it's like I do that kind of stuff. I'm the one, like, if there's somebody putting blood in your nose or whatever, it's going to be me.
Yeah.
Which, if somebody's going to hit Jennifer Stone in the face with a Frisbee, it's going to be me. So, like, I'm always in this position of like, you okay?
And what's great about this is that as we come back to the Alamo Drafthouse and host more of these, I see ourselves putting on an event where it's like you can get blooded by Blayne Weaver during the Q&A and that sort of thing as well. I think that would be amazing. So
Jack Frost in Santa Girl, Hank Stone, wore bright blue contact lenses. And he had never worn contact lenses and couldn't get them in his eyes. So I put his contact lenses in for the first 2 days. And then I said, Hank, you're on your own. You got it now. But I've never done anything like that. But like, that's the kind of hands-on treatment you get with a Blayne Weaver film.
Great. I'm going to write this down. So you'll put contacts in people's eyes post-COVID, and then put blood all over their face.
Absolutely. In the gag reel, in the blooper reel from Getaway, which I can't wait to screen, you know, when the DVD comes out or something with you. But like, there's a shot of me basically just putting blood all over Josh Cody, and he's like, keep my eyes open. I'm like, yes, keep your eyes open. Okay, you're dead. Stop breathing. Perfect. Cut.
So Blayne Weaver, before we go on to the next question I've got here, what is your relationship with blooper reels? I see that you had one for Santa Girl. You've got one here. Are you always like behind the scenes filming as well, wanting to capture some of that extra stuff? I mean,
no, I don't really have time to do that. But I love them so very much. And I tend to work with people who love them as well. You know, it's like, I like to laugh a lot on set. And so basically there's a blooper reel from Getaway that isn't anything that was shot extra. It's just while we're shooting, funny things happen, and my editor, Colby Doler, back in Louisiana, has been pulling them and saying, hey, do you want a blooper reel? I'm like, what? Yes. Santa Girl's blooper reel was mostly Lee Graff from the university did a lot, but also my editor just loves to throw things into a file. And because to me, like, I love making the movie, obviously, but the blooper reel is really us. And it's the photo album of the time at camp. You know, that's the stuff that I'll watch a blooper reel like 100 times. And, you know, because to me, it's usually a movie as a year. Like that year for me, was dealing with this from beginning to end. These people, these personalities, and I love a good blooper reel.
I love this. See, these are good questions. They let us down this path of further questions. All right, so question 2 then.
We're just at 2?
Yeah, we got 4 of these, by the way. This could be another hour in this process here. So Blayne Weaver, director of slasher film, director of holiday film, obviously director of students. Next step would be director of animals. If you got a chance to direct a movie with an animal in it, what animal would that be, and how would you require it to dress?
This is a complicated question. I think that the truth.
Why is it a complicated question?
No, because it's like there's the truth, and then there's like the fun. The truth is a very highly trained dog. Okay. That's pretty much like the extent of what I would want to deal with in any way. But if this was fun and we were, there wasn't, dozens of dollars on the line, I would say like a monkey. I like monkeys, and he could wear whatever he wanted, but probably some suspenders at some point.
Well, I tell you what, Clint Eastwood had that great comeback with the chimpanzee, obviously.
Glide left turn.
That's right. That's right. As you think about your writing style and wanting to write more things that appeal to kids, that is the next project right
It's
there.
true. I have a buddy who did a movie with a monkey, and he still has the scar from where the monkey bit him. And he has a story about how they paid this like very legit company in LA that's like Animal Trainers USA or whatever. It's made up. That's not the name. If it is a name, it was by accident. I don't know. But they paid him all this money to train the monkey to do a couple of things. And they got on set, and it became very clear to everyone that this monkey's never even, heard these lines is what I was going to say. But this monkey has no idea about this training. There's no training, and then bit the director. A highly trained dog, I would love.
Yeah. If this is not one of his questions, but I feel like it's a necessary follow-up to this. If a monkey were to bite you on set,
right,
would that make your blooper reel?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
It only is funny if people know.
Okay, got it.
Otherwise, it's like you're just mad about it your whole life. But if it's something that your friends laugh at, then you have a whole new life for it.
I like that. These are two last questions that we've got that are focused more towards Getaway, which is why we're here and supporting.
Right.
So I want to pull it back to it. You have someone who just saw Getaway, and they're saying to you, Blayne Weaver, I'd like to listen to something as I leave the theater to drive home. What song would you suggest for their car ride home from your film?
So hard. Well, I would say it's anything by the Daybreaks, which happened to be a band who provided a couple of songs for the movie.
Good.
So there you go. I'm going to plug them. Or by Tim Grogan, who's very talented. But to me, I don't know why Tom Petty pops into mind, but Tom Petty pops to mind. I think it should be, you should leave feeling like time well spent. I'm in a great mood. Let's talk about the twists and turns of that movie. I love leaving a movie that you want to talk about and not one that you want to rant about. I do that too. If I hate a movie, I will rant. I've ruined a relationship with the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. I just was so angry. But this movie you should leave and you should just want to talk about it and, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a piece of pie.
I like that. Twin Peaks style right there.
Yeah,
We're pulling it back from the beginning. Last question, and this is to do with your youthful endeavor, the youth that are out there right now. Tattoos are all the rage, obviously. There's no question about it. If you were going to get a tattoo to represent Getaway, what would it be? And where would you put it?
Wow, it's a very, very interesting question. So I'm going to go with, I would get our iconic poster designed by young Chad McLaren, but the poster's pretty hot. I feel like it says everything that it is. It says it's 80s, it says it's slasher, it says it's scary, but also it's a little throwbacky kind of thing. And I'd get it obviously right on my chest.
The entire poster right on your chest.
Sure. Absolutely.
Go big or go home, right, Blayne?
I mean, what are you doing? What are we even talking about here? I go with the monkey and the tattoo. And,
you've got to think how it's going to incorporate into the other films that you're working on, and that's right.
That's right. My best friend got this big tattoo on his back, and 20 years ago when we both lived in LA, we were both actors, and he still says to me, he quotes me and says, "Remember that time you told me I better not ever have to do a cowboy movie?" That's what I said. I hope you never have to do a cowboy movie. That tattoo will never work. Turns out, as a director, I've learned that everybody has tattoos and you have to cover them all the time. So just get used to it being a pain.
Well, not if you had the poster of your film, you had to cover that up. That's constant marketing going on right there. I mean,
that's a very good point.
I would go to your films just to see you rip your shirt off and be like, I've got to rewatch Getaway again, by the way. That's right. Reminding me
exactly
that this movie's out there.
And then I have to build in a story of why each different character has this tattoo. They're all in the same universe. Okay. I got I got the next movie. Go ahead.
I cannot wait to see the Blayne Weaver trilogy come out right now. Those were my questions right there for you. You know, they're gonna. I think these were good ones. I felt like they led us into a little bit more and that sort of thing.
You did a really good job.
You know, the classic ones are always favorite curse word. What do you got there, Blayne?
I'm an F word kind of guy.
Yep.
It just can be used in so many different fashions, and I lean on it heavily.
If you could have any other career or profession, what would it be?
You know, it's a funny question. Because I've thought about it a great deal recently. But like, politics was something that I thought I love The West Wing, and I always wanted to be Josh Lyman. So I feel like my alternative career would not be the guy running for something, but the guy helping someone run for something.
I like that. And then, of course, you know, Lipton's famous last one was always died and gone to the pearly gates. What would you want that spiritual figure to say to you as you walked up to it?
I think something like, "You're early. Go back. You're fine. You got a good couple of years. So thanks." But
I was anticipating the answer to be something like, "You've got blood all over your face and you're missing a contact. What's going on right there?
Exactly.
What's happening?
What's with that tattoo?
What's up with that tattoo?
Yeah, that's good. That's the
Oh
line.
my gosh, that's fantastic right there.
See, if I could have come up with that line, then, you know, I would really be going out of the high point here.
Well, I have missed our Q&As
Me too.
when we've had this opportunity, and I'm glad we could put something like this together. I appreciate your time. Sean, you got anything to wrap us up with? Anything you want to get out at the last moment?
No, just profound gratitude. I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed talking to you. Wish you all the success. And, you know, per what Andy said earlier, let's when there's another opportunity, let's do this again.
I would love that. We should talk writing sometime.
For sure. Yeah.
I'd love that.
Okay.
Yeah, I foresee Blayne Weaver being involved with the Lit Arts Festival at one point. I think there could be some fun stuff.
Wheels are
I'll
already
connect you two afterwards,
right.
that sort of thing.
In fact, I visualize a monkey with the scarecrow mask on, somehow involved in literary festival. Let's play with that.
Sold.
I would call it Blayne Weaver gets bitten by a monkey. How do you write it? For humor, for terror, and all of these sort of things. So, you know, our voice in the sky, I've forgotten your name and I apologize to you. Do we have any questions that came up through Facebook?
Do you mean Benjamin Park?
Benjamin Park.
All right. I can go ahead and check.
Oh, he's going to check for us right there.
Fantastic.
We'll use this time real quick just to remind that Sean and I are going to continue this series. We are working with our next guest, which should be in the next 3 weeks. We'll do another Facebook Live Zoom connection. And then we're working with our third in October. So look for 2 in October. Our goal is every 2-3 weeks to put these together. And I don't want to announce ours next, but it's another person actually who has a film out through Gravitas, which is kind of exciting and that sort of thing as well. So that's all I'm going to say.
All I can say is this person better not be more famous than me.
I don't think he's going to answer my 4 questions, I have to say.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
He'd hang out before we got to the first one.
There's some philosophy that'll come out, though. You'll hear
there is. That's all we've got. I have been sort of looking right now on Facebook, and I haven't necessarily seen. I saw a lot of love coming from a variety of things.
Yeah, I love that.
Collaborative storytelling. Mick Manhattan yells Blayne. Robert Adams was joining us and that sort of thing as well. So, you know, I think we'll just wrap it up right here.
I think we're good. Yeah, this was fantastic.
Unless we see something that we missed. So,
thank you guys so much for having me.
I'm afraid I don't see anything.
That's fine.
We're good. I think
nobody wants to know about me. Come on.
We were so thorough. What else is there? We
covered all.
Monkey with a scarecrow. I mean, you just walk away at that point.
We have almost guaranteed that for the holidays this year, Blayne will be getting a variety of different gift cards to tattoo parlors around the area.
Oh, fantastic. So, I love that.
Yeah. You're going to have to do it in pieces. Don't do it all at once. That's a painful area right there. So we look forward to more projects. Blayne Weaver, his film Getaway is obviously out now. Reach out to your local cinema that is open or to your drive-in and request them to play Getaway. We can connect you if you want to reach out to the Alamo Drafthouse page with the distribution company that's helping with the release of this film, Secret Identity Pictures, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to make sure we plug that.
Thank you.
Or your local drive-in as well. Support Santa Girl and any new projects that we have coming up. Let's make sure Blayne Weaver keeps making more and more movies because we want to keep talking to him about them. So, ladies and gentlemen, bravo to Blayne Weaver for tonight.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
Excellent. Thank you all. We appreciate it. And
Well.